All right, so let's get into the Central Division preview here. So last year's standings for the Central Division, we have the Milwaukee Bucks in first, the Pacers in second, the Bulls in third, the Pistons in fourth, and the Cavs in fifth. Only a half game separated the Cavs and Pistons between fourth and fifth. Obviously, with the season that got cut short, things like that could happen last year that usually don't. But let's start things off with the Milwaukee Bucks. They were 56-17 last year. They only lost 5 games at home. They only lost 1 game in the division. In the conference, they only lost 7 games. So they obviously dominated the East. Giannis, MVP. I mean, it was all like very easy to say. Then this offseason, they got a little bit better, to be honest. They drafted Jordan Nwora and Sam Merrill. They acquired Drew Holiday, Bobby Portis, DJ Augustine, Torrey Craig, Nick Stauskas, and Bryn Forbes. They did lose Bledsoe, George Hill, Matthews, Robin Lopez, Korver, Ilyasova, Sterling Brown, Cam Reynolds, Frank Mason III, and Marvin Williams. Out of those that they lost, the most notable probably being Bledsoe and Hill. But their acquisition in Drew Holiday kind of overshadows everything. That gives them, I think, a much better shot at making a deeper playoff run. I was never much of a Bledsoe fan. I didn't think Bledsoe was a kind of championship point guard that you would want on your team. And I think Drew Holiday, especially with his two-way abilities, gives you something that Bledsoe never did. And Drew Holiday will end up being, one of their saving graces, probably in a few different playoff games. They signed Giannis to the Supermax, which is a huge win, not only for Milwaukee, but for small market teams everywhere. He stays true to his word. He wants to stay with Milwaukee and really bring them, a title there. They showed the trust in him, so he's giving that back to them. And now we can finally quell all of those things saying Giannis to Toronto, Giannis to Miami, Giannis to the Golden State Warriors, Giannis here, Giannis there. He's still in Milwaukee for now, potentially for the next 4 or 5 years. We don't know what's going to happen within there. Obviously, something could change, and he might want out in that time period. But as of right now, he is a Buck. Now, this team may have had the deal fall through for Bogdan, but while they looked like surefire East favorites with Bogdan, they still look like top 2, even like I'm talking come Eastern Conference Finals. They still look like they would probably go up against, Kyrie and Kevin Durant in Brooklyn for the Eastern Conference Finals. However, there's just a little, I guess there's not as much insurance now. So while it would have been better that way, they're still looking really good. They're still looking pretty well off. So, yeah, I mean, this team still primed to, be the number 1, number 2 seed in the East. And I think it's going to, really with this team, it just comes down to will they continue that in the postseason, not just the regular season. So moving on to the Indiana Pacers. They were 45-28 last season. Not bad at all. They're still an odd, albeit playoff team, not a championship contender. They don't really have a star on this team. I guess the biggest star is either between Oladipo or Sabonis. Sabonis came out, was great for them last season. Oladipo did get hurt, and then he was apparently asking teams in the bubble if he could come play with them. He's since disputed it, but at the same time, I feel like there's probably some truth to that, whether it be the fact, whether the wrong part might be the fact that he asked in front of his teammates. I feel like he probably still might have asked. They drafted Cassius Stanley, which I think, could be a decent selection for them. They do need some wings here. after TJ Warren and Oladipo, it gets down to Jeremy Lamb and Justin Holiday, so there's a lot of room to upgrade there. They acquired Jalen LeCue, Keelan Martin, Amit Abrima, and Rayshawn Hammonds. I don't know if either four of them are even going to get much playing time. LeCue was pretty much down in the G League most of last season for Phoenix. And if you're in the G League for Phoenix, I feel like that kind of says a lot because they do need guard help there, especially the last couple seasons. Uber athletic player, though, that could definitely bring some excitement to the team. They still return their starting five in Malcolm Brogdon, Oladipo, TJ Warren, Sabonis, and Miles Turner. There was a lot of rumors going back and forth of them maybe trading Turner since him and Sabonis weren't exactly playing to the best of both of their capabilities together on the floor. They still have, in terms of their backups, Aaron Holiday, Justin Holiday, Doug McDermott, Goga Batadze, TJ McConnell. A lot of those guys. They bring in Jeremy Lamb. So this team's still really odd. I think that, they only lost TJ Leaf and Elise Johnson. TJ Leaf hasn't really turned out to be anything. Elise Johnson, a decent defensive player, but still not really a championship team. Still not really much to talk about with this team because there really hasn't been many big moves made. They did get a new coach, but other than that, it's kind of like, I don't think the coach is going to make this team a championship team. There has to be at least one or two stars added to this team to really make it a championship contender. So moving on to the Chicago Bulls, they're loading up with a new coach and young talent. Their new coach, Billy Donovan, should be great for the young guys. I think that Billy Donovan will really unlock the potential of a lot of these guys. And as far as the preseason goes right now, it looks that, a good bit of them look really good so far. And I think that, they're really only going to continue to get better. They did draft Patrick Williams with their first pick, and then they got Marko Simonovic. Patrick Williams at first was a very odd pick in where they were at with who else was on the board. However, Patrick Williams is looking like something that they do need. I mean, he's kind of that forward area that it could go like small forward, power forward, but also play some center. In that area, they have Lauri Markkanen right now, who also has been a little injury prone. So I feel like they're trying to hedge their bet on Lauri Markkanen and have this guy back there, almost like the Eagles that had Jalen Hurts and Carson Wentz. Just have that guy there just in case. So we'll see kind of what happens with that. A lot of their young guys still returning and still looking to have a lot of potential. The one guy who doesn't really factor in as much to any of their plans is Denzel Valentine. I feel like they gave him enough chances. He didn't really make the best of those chances or opportunities. And now it's kind of like, okay, let's move on and see what else we got with this team. The starting five, most likely looking to be Kobe White, Zach LaVine, Otto Porter, Lauri Markkanen, and Wendell Carter Jr. Not a bad starting five in terms of youth and potential. I feel like anyone on this team, if they were to be moved during the season, it probably would be Otto Porter, just because he doesn't exactly fit the timeline of the rest of these guys. Maybe Zach LaVine as well, but I feel like they're going to hang on to Zach LaVine to see what else they can get to go around him in the meantime. The only people they lost were Shaquille Harrison and Max Strus, two guys that really didn't even play for them much anyway. But I think the big chunk of potential for this team that they have to look at, outside of Patrick Williams that they just drafted, is going to be Kobe White, Zach LaVine, Lauri Markkanen, and Wendell Carter Jr. That's going to be a big question mark to see like how exactly fast this rebuild will be for the Bulls or not, if those four guys can show more and more more and more growth, more and more potential. And I think that if you could move Otto Porter for maybe like another first round pick or, like another younger guy that has some potential, I think that would be a good move for Chicago during the season as well. Moving on to Detroit. I can never really get a handle on Detroit or what the hell they're doing. They're making some weird moves. They made some decent moves too, but they're making some weird ones. I thought their draft was actually decent. They drafted Killian Hayes, Sadiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart, and Saban Lee. And then they added Jeremy Grant, Rodney Magruder, Musa, Jahlil Okafor, Mason Plumlee, and DeLone Wright. Out of those, I mean, I like the Jeremy Grant and DeLone Wright additions, but I feel like the money they signed Jeremy Grant for, he should be a little bit better than what he is for that type of money. Obviously, he might be able to get there, but with the current team, I feel like it doesn't make much sense. DeLone Wright, solid though. I like that. They lost Jordan Bone, Bruce Brown Jr., Langston Galloway, John Henson, Luke Kennard, Brandon Knight, Thon Maker, Jordan McRae, Tony Snell, Walton Jr., and Christian Wood. The most notable of those being Christian Wood, the guy who really has grown tremendously since his first season with the Sixers. It just doesn't make much sense to me that they let Christian Wood walk to Houston, but then went and got Jeremy Grant, Jahlil Okafor, and Mason Plumlee. That whole thing is just a very big head scratcher to me, and I don't exactly understand what the direction of that sequence of moves was. Like, you sign a bunch of big men, but lost the quality one that was there for you the entire time, and that you probably could have signed, probably around the same money, and you kind of already know what you're getting, a guy that's still growing and everything that, could grow more with the team. But hey, I guess they have some sort of plan, maybe, I don't know. The big thing to me, I think, is what are they going to do with Blake Griffin? Because there's no way Blake Griffin fits the timeline of this team. They're not going to be competing for a playoff spot, really. I think it's kind of long gone by now to expect Blake Griffin to return to his prime ways of when he was on the Clippers. So I think this is a guy you need to move. However, there's not a lot of people that are going to want to trade anything of value for him because of his injury issues and because he is not back into his prime or even really, doing everything he used to be able to do. And on top of that, like I said, the direction of the team isn't exactly clear, and it's kind of confusing what they are trying to go for with this. But I guess we'll find out. Then, finally, we have the Cavs, who are moving under the radar but still have a lot to build. They drafted Isaac Okoro. They added Thon Maker. They lost Tristan Thompson and Ante Zizic. So I think the added outweighs the lost there. Their starting five is looking pretty decent for the future with Darius Garland, Colin Sexton, Isaac Okoro, and Andre Drummond. And then even, their Kevin Porter Jr. could also be a starter in there. Also, C.D. Osman. Kevin Love right now is a starter, but I feel like that's a guy they're going to try and move the moment they find enough value for him during the season. The growth of the guys of Sexton, Garland, and Porter, though, I think will be the biggest things to watch for. What kind of steps are they making or leaps are they making this year? How Isaac Okoro fits into this roster with them. And, of course, Andre Drummond does look, so far, he looks in good shape. He looks like he's refocused, re-energized, remotivated. And it looks like he's ready to really compete for, the respect that he thinks he deserves again. They do have decent backups in terms of Dante Exum. Matthew Dellavedova's still there. Larry Nance Jr. is there as well. They brought in JaVale McGee. So they have some decent backups in there as well. And they also still have young guys like Dean Wade, Matt Mooney, and Dylan Windler. We'll have to see if those guys can actually vault themselves into the rotation because these are guys that we really only saw in G League most of the time. So there's a lot of growth still happening in Cleveland and a lot of stuff still to watch in terms of that as well. So my division prediction for the Central is the Bucks in first again, the Pacers in second again, but the Bulls moving up to third, the Cavs moving to fourth, and the Pistons down in fifth. Sorry, Detroit fans.